Okay, so hello everyone. Welcome again to our virtual lecture for purpose of communication. So for today's lesson, we'll be talking about communication and globalization. And the second part, we will be learning more about globalization and local communication in multicultural settings. All right, so before we delve deeper into these topics, we are going to answer this question: what does it mean to say that a language is global? Okay, so a language becomes global if it is spoken and understood by majority of the population in almost every region of the world. So in this case, based from its definition, we can say that English is a global language because it is not only spoken by the native speakers, but a lot of people coming from different parts of the world know how to speak it, right? So therefore, we can say that English is the global language. And why did it happen? Well, if we're gonna go back to our history, we will learn that way back in the 18th century, so the British Empire had colonized different countries from all parts of the world. And along with that so called colonization, so they bring with them their language. So, and that's why a lot of countries nowadays can speak English very well. And of course, that includes us, right? So now let's talk about the term globalization. So, from the word itself, global, what do you mean by that? Actually, according to Griffin and Bone 2014, globalization is originally an economic concept. So it refers to the process through which local and regional products and practices are transformed into worldwide ideas, products, and practices. So, what do we mean by that? So, for example, in the Philippines, so in our country, so in our place, we do have our own local products. So, let's say, for example, we have copper products, all right? So, out of these local products, we try to export them from different countries, and different countries will try to make other products out of that copper products, and it would be available not only to the local market but all around the world. So it will become available to the worldwide market. So that's why it is known to be globalization. Now, another meaning is that globalization is the process by which people and as well as goods move easily across borders. So that is true, right? That's why it's called globalization because different products are being imported to different parts of the world. So, for example, in our case, so we are sometimes importing chocolates, for example, from other countries. So that's an example of globalization. All right. Now, how did globalization happen? Well, this concept actually started even back in 130 BCE to 1453 BCE during the establishment um, of the Silk Road. All right. So what is Silk Road? Okay, so Silk Road is actually an ancient network of trade routes. So that was established during the Han Dynasty of China. So this Silk Road became their international trade routes during that time, connecting China to Far East countries and even European countries and in the Middle East. So if you can see here in the screen, um, yeah, in the screen, this one, all right. So this is the road where they are traveling if they want to transport and import products from China to another places. So this is their roads that or routes that they're going to ilahang lakawon. So mo ni siya ang ilahang gamiton or routes. All right. So now in today's group, globalization still happens, okay? And it's a lot and a way easier than before. So if you have noticed here again in a picture, just by logging into your phones, your iPads, your tablets, or your laptops, globalization can happen, right? For example, if you're an online seller, so you just log in into your application, like such as shopping application and other apps. There you go. So just by clicking your finger on. you can sell your product to people from different parts of the world, right? The same as true when you are buying products, just by logging as well onto apps where you can shop to different parts of the world. So you can definitely do that. So do again globalization against work. So just by doing that, so as simple as it is. Okay. Next, what are the impacts of globalization in communication? Okay. So first up, you know, globalization increases business opportunities. So, for example, there's a lot of multinational companies right now who hire employees that are located in different countries. So, if they want to talk or converse with in terms of planning or improving their products, so they can just do that even by logging in or to logging into Zoom application, for example, or Skype, Bakaha, or any other online platforms. Okay, like I mentioned earlier, if you are an online seller, you have also increased business opportunities in a way that you are selling your products not just in the local market, but in the worldwide market as well. So, globalization has really have a big impact in terms of business. And along with that, communication also happens, right? Because when you are transacting your business, you are also communicating to different people, and unconsciously, you are not just, should I say, transacting your products, but you are also carrying along with you your language, right? And that language, of course, is English because that's the dominant language that people are using from different parts of the world. Okay, so next up we have remove cultural barriers. A lot of people would say that culture is the root of communication challenge, right? But actually, globalization has made it possible to remove cultural barriers. For example, a person in Japan would be able to understand how someone in the United States goes about their day, right? So how do they do that? How do they know that? So by just looking at television shows or and as well as movies show or yeah, US shows, so cultural barriers in that way are becoming less prevalent. And if you constantly talk and communicate to different people as well, so having different culture as well, you would be able to understand them better. You'd be able to understand their practices and their culture as well. Okay, so next up is it tries to develop a global village. Well, actually, the term or praise rather global village. So that was coined by a theorist named Marshall McLuhan. So why global village? So according to him or according to Marshall, a global village happens or it is created when distance and isolation does not matter anymore because people are connected or intertwined by a digital means or by technology. So, for example, if you want to enroll in a famous university, well, you don't have to really go to that university because you can just enroll even if you are staying in in your own home country. So, if you want to enroll, for example, to Harvard, for example, through online means, so you're trying to remove distance in this case because you're trying to connect people from different parts of the world through technology, man. And of course, more language contact happens. Okay, yes, this is true. Like I said earlier, if there is globalization, language occurs as well. And language contact happens. And with that, globalization definitely can affect communication. Okay, so next, so what about local and global communication in multicultural settings? So as what can you see here in the picture? So through globalization and as well as through communication, so globally we can be able to collaborate with each other, no matter what races or nationality you belong to. Um, and we usually and also we Filipino we usually do that, right? We are fond of doing that because we are very friendly to people from different countries, right? For example, if Americans or foreigners will visit our country or visit our place, so we usually say hi to them, right? Even if Koreans, so that's why we Filipinos are fond of doing that because we are friendly towards other people or other foreigners. Okay, so Now talking about now talking about multiculturalism. So it's proper for us to discuss what is actually the way in which a society deals with cultural diversity, both at the national and at the community level. So we actually have different culture. So so it means many, right? And culture, the different practices or set of practices, belief of a certain group of people in a certain line in a certain land, right? Or in a certain region. So multiculturalism does not only happen in the worldwide level. So in the Philippines rather, multiculturalism is present even at the community level and even at the national level. So in what way? So for example, in the province of Negros Occidental. So people there are speaking different dialects like Hiligaynon and as well as Cebuano. And of course, in each town or in each cities, so unconsciously we do have different practices, right? That are somehow different from other cities in the province. So multiculturalism happened if you are trying to deal with people having different or with diverse culture. So that's multiculturalism. So now, um, what do we mean by global and local communication in multicultural setting? So we can communicate other people in multicultural setting if we understand that we coexist with people from diverse or different cultural backgrounds, beliefs, religion, what else, gender, nationalities, ethnicities. So understanding the fact that we coexist, so it means that we need to try to respect them. Do we have our very own set of beliefs? But we should try to, we should try to respect their practices and as well as beliefs. So, for example, if that person has a different religion like Buddhism, Confucianism, what else, born again Bakha, Iglesia ni Cristo, and so forth and so on, or whatsoever religion you may have there. So of course, so that means that they have different beliefs, right, or practices that set apart from what we have. So understanding their beliefs and as well as practices, it will definitely bring to a better communication. So why? So ano man, because if you're blocking yourself in understanding their practices, you would not be able to communicate effectively. You would not be able to learn from them because in the first place you are trying to block yourself out with their opinions because of the fact that they differ from your opinion. Do you know what I'm saying? Yes, like that. So you're blocking yourself from them. Okay, you're separating yourself from them. So you need to be open-minded in that way. Okay, so next, we can interact better in multicultural settings if we have also to understand that verbal and nonverbal communication varies from one culture to another. All right, so let's say, for example, the shaking of hands. So in United States, it is very common, especially if you greet or if you meet someone on that day. So that's their nonverbal gestures to show that, yeah, we're friends, we're okay, right? So we agree on something. So that's their gestures to do that. But in Japan or in Korea, for example, so their nonverbal communication is different because um, they bow whenever they meet someone, right? Do you observe that, diba? From Korean novellas, okay? Right? So another example is of course nodding. Nodding. Nodding is also different in different cultures. So let's say for example in the Philippines. So in America, for example, Philippines and as well as in America, for example, nodding means yes, right? But in another country, such as Greece, Syria, what else? Turkey. For them, nothing means no. So when you communicate in a multicultural context, so it is very important for you to acknowledge so that you can understand the various communication and behavioral patterns of the culture that you are interacting with. So through that, you will be able to understand each other better. All right. So next part, we have to understand that if you are in a multicultural setup, you have to develop intercultural communication skills. So, and these skills were emphasized by Volpe and others 2001. So, so first one is your ability to express understandable and culturally sensitive thoughts, feelings, opinions, and expectations. But you have to express it in a way that you're not disrespecting other people, because if you do that, communication will definitely not happen. Instead, it might cause war or argument between you and the other opponent. Okay? So next is the ability to engage and immerse in the local culture and language. So, being able to be flexible enough to engage in different local culture and language is not easy. It's not just a walk in the park. So, it takes courage and at the same time patience. But if you do that, it will bring a fruitful result on your part. All right. So next is the ability to establish shared meanings with the local people and to avoid stereotyping and miscommunication. So, what do you mean by this? If you're communicating in multicultural setup, you have to let them know also what are some of your behavioral patterns in your culture. Okay, so for example, if you're in Syria, as I mentioned earlier, and you're communicating with them, and of course, if you nod, that would definitely lead to misunderstanding on their part, that you are saying no instead of yes, because for them again nothing means no, but for you nothing means yes, right? So it is better if you're going to establish shared meanings, so you have to let them know that in my country nothing means yes. And it's also better to do what the second ability mentioned. You have to engage and immerse in the local in their culture. So if for them nothing means no, so you try to adapt it, right? So you try to follow or adapt that there nothing means no, so you should also adapt that, yeah, nothing means no. Okay, so next up is the ability to develop language capacity, such as using local greetings and opportunities to use the local language in other contexts. Okay, so if you are new to another land or to a foreign land, you have to somehow at least master the basics of the greetings, right? And some of the basic language that they are using, for example, if you want to go to Korea, so you need to practice their greetings, like how they said hello to other people, diba? So in Korea, their hello says "안녕하세요," and then manasa bangap satnida, so it means nice to meet you, and so forth and so on. Okay, and of course, the ability to empathize with how the locals see the world. Empathy right now is not common to many people. So if you try to empathize, people will also empathize back to you if you need it, right? And empathy also would lead to a better communication. Now let's move on to how communi- how to communicate effectively in a global society. So what should you do? So first up, it's better that you try to express your ideas effectively in verbal and non-verbal written forms in either digital or non-digital environment or both. So expressing your ideas effectively would lead to a better communication, whether that is through digital or non digital means, okay? So, expressing idea also entails that you try to understand what is in the culture of that person. So, in that way, you should be able to understand each other. So, next is the use of effective listening skills to evaluate arguments and rationalize judgments. And improve effectiveness and work relationship. So listening is very important, all right? So it leads to a better communication, and of course it leads to a better relationship. So if you're not a good listener, so communication will definitely not happen, all right? So next is communicate with purpose to a variety of audiences. So you have to know first, like we mentioned in our last lesson, that communicating with purpose is one of the principles that we need to consider when we are having oral communication. So you need to know why in the first place you're communicating with that person, okay? So next is promote collaboration and cooperation with each other, right? So this is actually a self-explanatory. It's very important to collaborate and as well as cooperate. So next up, so we have to understand the concept of diversity and promote respect all the time. So we have to understand that people come from different countries, and along with them they do have practices and as well as culture that are super different from ours, right? So we have to understand. So there is actually a saying that sometimes it's better to be kind than to be right, right? So if you don't understand what they're doing, so just be kind enough to respect what they do. So even though if you think that's not right, okay? So next is use technology and social media responsibly. So in social media, so there are lots of people would bash other people from other parts of the world without realizing that those people they are bashing are also humans, are humans as well who have feelings, right? So we need to use social media responsibly, not in a way that we would degrade other people. So now what are the tips and that we need to bear in mind when you're communicating in a multicultural context. Okay, so first we have to avoid asking inappropriate or personal questions. Okay, so a lot of people create mistakes in this part because for them it's just okay to ask personal questions, but no, it's actually not. Not unless if you're super close or super friends to that person. If there's one thing that you do not understand with their practices, it's much better to establish a good relationship first before you can ask inappropriate question and personal and as well as confidential question. All right, so we need to avoid doing that. Then second, stereotyping or generalizing certain groups. So keep an open mind and be flexible. So what is stereotyping? Well, actually, it is defined as creating standard mental picture towards a certain group of people. Like you already have a prejudiced opinion or view about that group of people. So, for example, black male athletes are often believed to be more athletic, yet a lot of people would stereotype them to be less intelligent compared to their white male counterparts. So in the local setting, for example, Cebuano speaking people, so they said that Cebuano people are not good into fashion. Some people would say that the way we spoke English is very hard as well as when we speak Tagalog pod. Tagalog pod, so bista kuno kaayo. But that's not actually true. So we have to avoid stereotyping other people, no matter what culture they may belong to, no matter what gender they belong to, race, nationality, religion. So instead we have to be flexible, we have to be open-minded, and we have to recognize that we have different practices, we have different beliefs, but what's important is that we understand each other. All right, so next part is we have to avoid using jargons, cliches, highfalutin terms, technical terms, acronyms, and gender biased language. All right. So, for example, if you are in the medical field and you are just talking to a layman, right? So, when we say layman, so like an ordinary person, so you try to avoid using technical terms that they cannot understand. So instead, you try to simplify your words, use easy words to be understood. So in that way, effective communication will take place. So next, we have to try to be sensitive, be polite, be respectful, be tactful at all times, and you have to learn and understand that the value of diversity, right? So I guess that's a self-explanatory. And also we need to develop intercultural communication skills like I mentioned earlier. And of course you have to eliminate gender bias or words or sexist language in particularly in writing. So later on we'll know the different gender bias words and sexist language that we have to avoid. Okay? So next we have to request or yeah, we have to request him or her to repeat the message to repeat the message or simplify it in case you do not understand the message conveyed by the person you are communicating with. So if there is a question in your mind that you cannot understand it very well, so it is better to ask that person to avoid miscommunication. All right? So next is we have to learn and observe physical distance or space in dealing with other people. So of course, right now, so in the midst of pandemic, so we have to observe yes, social distancing. But regardless whether there's pandemic or not, so we have to avoid being too close when we're talking because in some cultures, shaking hands and hugging or even kissing on the cheeks for friends, they are deemed to be inappropriate for some countries, like in the Middle East countries. So we have to observe physical distancing or space whenever we're talking, and we have to listen attentively. So I guess I already mentioned this. Listening is very important. So the Bible even said that you should be quick in listening than in speaking because listening effectively will lead to effective and efficient communication. All right. So next, observe patience and listening to others people's ideas which may not be the same as yours. So we have to be very patient, we have to understand them, try to understand them although their ideas might not be the same with your ideas. We need to be patient in that way. So next is pay attention to your nonverbal communication. Like what I said earlier, you have to understand that in every culture we have different nonverbal communication. So you have to pay attention to that and learn the basics of that. All right? Next, respect the person's right to confidentiality and privacy. Okay, that's self-explanatory as well. So next, um, we have to be considerate with them. We have to speak politely and gently to other people. We have to stay calm and cool and composed when you make a mistake or feel embarrassed by others. Like when you make a mistake, do not cram. You have to understand that we are all imperfect. Every day we commit mistakes, whether in speaking, whether in writing, or in any other aspects of our lives. We all made mistakes. So if ever you did a mistake, we should avoid to be overreacted, okay? Now next, we have to make a positive interpretation of the actions and words of other people. So do not be automatically be negative on what others said or the actions that they have manifested. Instead, we should try to understand. Now, there is a saying that mature people are always trying to understand. They do not try to look at the surface. Rather, they try to delve deeper behind the actions of other people. So be mature enough in interpreting positively the actions and words of other people. All right. So next is when you feel strange or uncomfortable about something being communicated by other people, so you try to request them to clarify their meanings and intentions before you express your emotions and ideas. You have to clarify first before reacting. All right. So now, like I mentioned earlier, it is important we have to avoid gender biased, right? Gender biased words or sexist language. So now, what are those gender biased words that we have to avoid, especially in writing or even in speaking? Okay. So first off, we have to avoid the word chairman because of the word man right here, right? So instead it's better just to use a chair or a chairperson. So it refers to both men and women. Another, we have salesman. We change it to a salesperson. So this is right. Another, we have congressman. So you can say legislator. and then another spokesman, and then you can say spokesperson and not man. Okay, foreman. So you can change it to um, supervisor. Then stewardess. So you can change it into, what do you think? Yeah, it's flight attendant. All right. What else? Okay, so we have another. We have waitress. So you can use the word server in a restaurant. And then another, a policeman. Again, you have that man. All right. So just change it into police officer. All right. Another. Okay, fireman. Another man na said. So we have to change it into firefighter. And then next, man-made. So you can change it into manufacturer. Then next is businessman. So into business executive. So this is better. So business executive. So this is better. Next is manpower. And then two, workforce. All right. So now it's very important that we try to avoid gender biased words or sexist language because in today's world, we're trying to promote equality between men and as well as women. So even in the use of such words, they are just words, but they can create a big impact to other people. Okay. Now, how can we avoid gender biased language? So here are the tips. So first one, we have to substitute gender biased pronouns with articles or determinants. All right, so for example, every employee is entitled to his 13th month pay. So that mean it's only for men, right? So in that organization or in that company. So no, you're referring also to women, also employees of that certain company. So it's better to say every employee is entitled to a 13th month pay. So you change his to, instead you replace it with an article which is an up. So every employee is entitled to a 13th month pay. All right, so next, so use plural nouns instead of singular pronouns. So for example, each employee must submit his proposal next week. So again, you have the word his here, right? So we have to avoid this one. So instead of singular pronouns, we can change it into all employees. We can change it into all employees must submit their proposal next week. So we use plural nouns instead of singular pronouns. All right, so next, use either or pronouns he, she, her, his or hers. However, avoid we need to avoid putting men first all the time. So for example, um, every applicant must fill out his own application form. So we can do it like this. So every applicant must fill out his or her own application form. So we should avoid putting men first at all the time in this aspect. Okay, so you can also say that every applicant must fill out her or his own application form. So that's it. That's the meaning of avoid putting men first all the time. So instead of using his or hers, you can also alternate it from her to his. All right. So next, number four. So use second pronoun like you or your over third person pronoun he or she. So be careful not to change the meaning of the sentence or the statement. Okay, so for example, the manager should prepare his marketing proposal for our new product. So instead of his here, you can change it into you should prepare your marketing proposal for our new product. So in this case, it's okay because you're talking probably in this case to the sales manager. But again, you have to be very careful not to change the meaning of the statement. All right. So next, we have to use appropriate title. Use appropriate titles. So it's very necessary, especially if you're writing a letter. For example, if you don't know an unknown address, like you don't know the person who would be receiving that letter, so you'd avoid using only sir, because maybe that person is a woman. So instead, it's better to use dear sir or madam, and then you have to put colon over there and it's unknown, or you can say attention, and then HR manager in this case, so it's non sexist. All right, so especially if you don't know who or who will be receiving that letter. Okay, so I guess that covers everything.